Our topic today is how to develop and implement business processes that employees will actually follow. And if any of you have any specific things you want to cover today, go ahead and put them down in the chat. Everyone is muted so that we don't have a lot of background noise, but I do want to hear from you. And we do have a couple of polls actually that we're going to run today so we can get some feedback. And so pay attention, and I think you're going to get a lot out of today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the author of the book, Find the Lost Dollars, 6 Steps to Increase Profits in Architecture, Engineering, and Environmental Firms. I was actually a Dell Tech partner, first Win2 and then Dell Tech for over 25 years. And so I've worked with over 1,000 A&E firms over the last 30 years. And for the last five years now, I have been training A&E professionals how to make more money on projects. That's basically what I do every day, is I teach A&E firms how to run more effectively, more efficiently, and I train project managers and other technical professionals how to think like an owner, how to be a business person, and run profitable projects. And that's my passion. I love helping companies to be more successful. Our goal for today is to really get you to think about your business processes. What's going on in your company? How can they be more efficient? And what you can do, and I'm hoping to give you some really good ideas today, what you can do to help improve your company's business processes. Now, my theory is business processes can always be better than they are. Even if you spent a lot of time working on them in the past, they can either be easier, clearer, more automated, and also make sure your employees know how to follow them. So we're going to talk about a lot of those things today, and I hope I get you excited and motivated to dig into this in your company, because it really does pay off. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what is the order that we try to make improvements in our business? Now, over the years, when I was a Dell Tech partner, what I would see is companies would buy our software. So they would go for the systems or the technology side first, and then they would train the people, and then they would think about the processes. And the processes were normally last. So it was usually systems, people, processes, or sometimes it was systems, processes, and people. And I actually found out over the last 5 years that sometimes you have to start with the people first. And the reason is, if you go to put a new system in and your employees, or a new process for that matter, and your employees don't understand why you're doing it, and you don't have effective change management practices in place, which all have to do with people, then you're going to get low buy-in, low user adoption, and you're going to have a really difficult time getting everybody to do what you want them to do. So today we're going to talk about how to do that effectively, how to get your people in the right mindset so that they will follow your processes, and how do you develop effective business processes. We're going to get right into that today, and really talk about why it's so important to make sure your business processes are kept up to date, are easy to understand, and as automated as possible. So this is my definition of a business process. For me, a business process is the best way to do something. It's kind of hard for your employees to argue with you when you say to them, we are putting in place practices to ensure we're doing things the best way possible. Who could argue with that, right? And very often, part of the problem is just the word process. People don't like the word process. And all it is a best practice. It's a best way of doing something. So that's one way of selling it to people, is we as a company want to run our business the best way possible. And once we discover what that is, we want everyone doing it. And when everyone is doing things the best way possible, we're going to maximize our efficiency, our profitability, our client satisfaction and service. our business development results, everything are going to be maximized because we're doing things the best way. And so we're going to talk about how to figure that out. So there's a lot to be gained from implementing effective business processes. The market research firm IDC found that companies are losing 20–30% of their revenue because they don't have effective business processes. If you just think about your proposal processes alone, or your business development processes, or your client relationship practices that you have in place, how much better could they be to improve and increase that revenue? And right now, revenue is uncertain. That's the word I'm using at the moment. Some firms I work with are seeing they're busier than ever, and others are getting worried, and especially about later this year. So ensuring that you have the ability to maximize your revenue and your profits is really important right now. So what is the problem with processes? Because everyone I talk to seems to have some issues with processes. Well, there's a wide variety of issues, and we're going to talk about them and why they happen and what you can do about them. But first of all, in many firms, and I say many, I think it's actually a majority in the A&E industry, processes don't exist. Now, they may exist in your mind, or there may be people doing things that look like processes, but if they're not written down, they really don't exist. So in some cases, your processes don't exist, so they're not documented. Sometimes they're documented, but nobody can find them. I've actually had situations where I was in a conference room talking about business processes, and some senior leaders in the firm said, "Oh, we have that process. Where is it?" "Oh, well, we developed it 10 years ago and it's on our portal." If a business process hasn't been updated in a long time, it's really can be quite useless. Very often, employees have not been trained on the processes. So you might have processes, they may have actually been documented, but nobody knows how to follow them. That really is not your employee's fault. Although it may feel like it sometimes, it really isn't their fault. Sometimes they refuse to follow them. Now, I've discovered there are a lot of reasons why employees don't follow business processes. Sometimes they don't like the process. Sometimes they think their process is better. If you've done acquisitions, very often you will bring on a new company and they believe their way of doing things is a lot better than the new parent company, and they will resist the processes. Sometimes the processes are so cumbersome that it takes the employees so much longer to follow the process that they've created their little workarounds. Maybe they have spreadsheets, and they have their own ways of doing things. I very often work with companies, and they have, every office is doing things differently. They're doing billing differently. They're doing proposals differently. They have different practices in place. And that can also be very inefficient for a whole multitude of reasons. If your processes are rarely or never updated, they could be useless. You might have done 3 updates to all of your different software products. You might have changed the way that you communicate internally, but your processes have never been updated. Or they may refer to people who are no longer at your firm. Sometimes they're not detailed enough. Sometimes I'll ask a company, "Show me your timesheet process." And it's one little paragraph. "Your timesheets are due on Friday by close of business. Blah, blah, blah." It's just not useful. Sometimes they are very cumbersome. They're too long. I had a client recently ask for my help to develop a collection process, and they sent me a 9-page document. And I said, "Who is going to read this?" We ended up cutting it back to 2 pages, which even a 2-page document will be challenging sometimes to get people to follow them or to read them, including your clients, by the way. Sometimes the process doesn't work. So your employee is trying to follow the process, but there's something missing, there's steps missing. It's just not useful. And very often, one of the biggest issues I see is that processes aren't enforced. There has to be accountability. If timesheets are due Friday at close of business, but nobody turns them in till Monday afternoon, that is going to totally mess up your accounting department. It's going to mess up your cash flow, and it's going to delay your billing getting out at least a day. So enforcing the processes is just as important as implementing them. So we have a business management assessment survey that many of our clients have run with their employees. And so far, and this data is actually a little bit old, but as of late last year, we had surveyed over 2,650 architects, engineers, and environmental consultants, professionals that work at A&E firms. And we look at 9 areas of their business, and we break it down by people, process, and system. So we can analyze where the strengths and weaknesses are with the people, the processes, and the systems. We looked at small firms, large firms, some actually very large firms. And we received back from that, the cumulative surveys, over 9,000 comments. And actually, the comments are where we get a lot of insight as to what's really going on in each firm. So on average, each employee gave over 3 comments about how the firm could be better and where they saw improvements. And they all answered the same questions. So I wanted to share with you some feedback that we got. These are actual quotes from the comments from the A&E professionals who took the surveys. And these are anonymous surveys. If a procedure exists, most folks don't know about it. Very common problem. When you survey your people and you ask them about your processes, you will see that up to 50% or more don't even know. And I'm talking about things like go, no go, change order process, very important. We don't set up a new project without a signed contract. All of those things that are so critical to ensuring that your projects are going to run and run effectively and profitably. If your employees don't know they exist, they're not going to happen. So our processes haven't been updated for years. And this employee is saying we should implement a yearly review of standard procedures, at least every year. And I'm saying probably more often than that. There should be at least one person in your firm that is responsible for managing processes. This was a comment from someone: educate, inform, and train the staff on how the process is supposed to work. And honestly, just because you hand somebody a piece of paper or a document with a process on it, doesn't mean they understand it. And very often they don't understand the why. And actually the why is as important as the how. Because when employees don't understand why, they don't take things very seriously. And in our business management training program, that is one of the things that is the most important piece of our training. We teach people the why behind everything they're learning. If you just go to your employees and say, do your timesheets, you need to run the go, no go, you need to get a change order to reduce scope creep. If they don't understand why, and it may seem incredibly intuitive to you, it may not be at all to them. And I love this comment. I'm not sure that held accountable is something we follow with any consistency here. Does that sound like your firm in any way? And when I talk about accountable, that means there are rewards and consequences for not doing what you're supposed to do. And I believe accountability is a positive thing and can be implemented in a positive way. So I have a poll for you. I hope all of you can respond to the poll. So you get a chance here to rate your own business process. Are they fully documented, partially documented, not documented? What are business processes? And I have gotten that answer sometimes, so that's not as funny as it sounds. And don't be afraid to pick that if that's the case in your company. keep in mind, you can always get better. I'll give you another. I think we've got almost everyone. A few more of you. All right. So it looks like 92% of you have partially documented, and 8% do not have documented processes. So those are the results. And okay, so on we go. All right, so what happens if you don't have good business processes? And all of you have said, most of you have said, partially documented. So let's see, you could lose proposals that you were supposed to, you possibly could have won. I have one client, I was able to increase their win rate from 16% to 64% in 1 year by implementing better processes. It makes a huge difference. Inaccurate estimates. If you start a project with a crappy estimate, you're going to have a crappy project. Scope creep and write-offs. You're going to have more write-offs when you don't have good business processes. You're going to have poor communication, both internally with your subcontractors, your clients, with everybody. You're going to waste employee time. They're going to be running around the office looking for information, trying to find files, trying to find things because things aren't documented well. You're going to have rework or possibly poor quality control, because if you don't have very, very tight quality control processes, and this also relates back to risk and safety as well. Those are all issues when you don't have good processes. Poor project management. I run into firms every day that tell me, well, we don't have any project management processes. So your project managers are winging it. They're guessing. It's not the best way to run a project. And you're going to have inaccurate timesheets and invoices, which will slow your cash flow down to a crawl. It'll mess up all of your reporting that's coming out of your system. You're not going to have good job cost reports. You're not going to have good overhead rates. You're not going to have good financial statements. It's real tough. And ultimately, this causes a lot of pain, lost revenues and profits, lost clients, employee frustration. Think about it. Your employees aren't sure how to do something, so they have to guess, or they have to create their own spreadsheets. It's very frustrating. It can even cause turnover. It can definitely affect utilization because you're wasting time. It can mess up your project schedule. It can slow down your cash and ultimately slow down your growth of your company because things are not being done the best way possible. So I have a little story for you. This is my neighbor, Paul, and Paul graduated 2 or 3 years ago from Villanova with a degree in mechanical engineering. And Paul went right out of college and got a job with a manufacturing company. So he didn't actually go into the design and construction industry. He went into manufacturing. And here's a lesson right here. Immediately, when Paul was hired by this company, he was immediately put into their management training program, which I personally think is a brilliant move. This is something that A&E firms don't do, but probably should do. The day your employees start, they could be put into a management training program. Think about it. How much better project managers you're going to have in 4 or 5 years if you start them off young. So Paul was put into a management training program, and as part of that management training program, they kind of moved him around to different parts of the company, and they had him working in different groups and different with different teams of people, and they put him in their factory, which is actually in Southern Virginia. And 3 weeks into this, his time there at the factory, I get this email from his mom, who's a friend of mine, lives in my neighborhood. And she said, June, I was hoping you could help us out. I know you work with business processes. And, you know, Paul started this job 3 weeks ago, and he's discovered about 20 things that his company is doing really inefficiently. And they're losing a ton of money. And in this email, she had put a whole list of business problems that Paul had discovered in his first 3 weeks on the job in this plant. 22 years old. So she says to me, what should we do? Can you help us? Do you think you could reach out to the company? And I said, no, what I want you to do is have Paul take that list of things he found, figure out how much money he thinks each one of those things is losing the company. And then I want him to contact the CEO of the company, go to the CEO and tell him what's going on. And he did it. And guess what? Paul got a promotion. And how would you feel if one of your 22-year-olds came to you with a list of things and said, look, this is how we can be a better company? I think it's phenomenal. But the real lesson in this is that even your youngest employees can help solve these problems. It isn't just the people that have been there 10 years, 12 years, 20 years. It's everyone. Everybody has good ideas. Very often we're not listening to them. And that's unfortunate, because what I have found is when you reach out and ask your employees, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but when you ask them, they'll give you some great stuff. So let's talk about some examples, because I want you to be able to take this and really think about your own business, what is happening every day, and how you can connect the dots here. So let's talk about timesheets. If you don't have a great timesheet policy, and everyone complains about timesheets, everybody comes to me, every single client I have ever had in the last 30 years has come to me and said, oh, I can't get people to do their timesheets on time. They're not accurate. They put the wrong phase codes. You know, what do I do? So this is partially because what happens is you onboard an employee, you give them like 5 minutes of timesheet training and off they go. No one ever talks to them about their timesheet again. When is my timesheet due? What if I'm out of the office? How do I do my timesheet? How do I edit my timesheet? I think I made a mistake. Who's supposed to approve my timesheet? Who do I go talk to about my timesheet? Who do I ask if I have a question about my timesheet? How do I charge my comp time? How do I charge my overtime? What if I'm out of the office? What do I do? Okay, so every single time your employee has one of these questions, they're going to waste at least 5 minutes, okay? And let's say you have 100 employees and your employees waste at least 5 minutes every 2 weeks. What does that cost you? It's at least probably 100 grand. I don't know. I haven't done the math on that particular one. I am a math person, but do the math. It's not hard to figure out. It's costing money. And so not having these processes in place is costing a lot of money. So here's another example that I see all the time. How many of you like doing SF330s? Nobody, right? So what goes in each section? Which boilerplate text should I use? Do we do any other projects like this? Well, what other projects did we do? And who worked on them? And what was the construction costs? And how many hours did it take us? Were we on budget? What was the fee? How do I find the financial numbers that I need? I don't know where to look. Oh, I got to go ask the accounting department. Well, they don't like being asked for stuff, do they? There we go. Now your proposal goes from taking 3 days to 6 days. And I can tell you, every single person I talk to that works on proposals tells me it can be more efficient. It can be more effective. And when your proposal process is more efficient and effective, you will win more. At a minimum, you'll get more proposals done, or you won't miss your deadlines to get them out. So it definitely pays off to work on this stuff. And I hope those are really two good examples for you. So we're gonna have the second poll. Let's see, where's the second poll? So our employees know and follow our business processes. Always, usually, never. They have no idea we have processes. And if you did our business management assessment, I'll bet you 50% of your employees on at least 50% of your processes would say they have no idea they exist. That's the scary part. And the interesting thing is also that you may not have any idea about this because you may have done a really great job of documenting your processes, putting them out there, getting them out into the world. But then in the last 2 years, you've grown so much, you've had turnover, you've done some acquisitions, 50% of your employees don't know what's going on. And so this is something that has to be, really focused on a regular basis. So let's see, most of you have voted here. 85% said usually, 8% never, 8% they have no idea we have processes. Thanks for being honest. Okay, so now I want to talk about how you go about the implementing or documenting and creating your business processes. I was on yesterday with the CFO of a 200-person environmental firm, and he said to me, I can look at a business process and see if it's good or not, but I can't create one from scratch. I don't know where to start, right? So there's 3 types of business process documentation. We're going to talk about these, and this will hopefully give you some ideas about what kind of business processes you already have, and maybe there's some other kinds you could put in place. So the first type are steps, and you could think of this as a checklist. Now, the first thing is you should always have on your steps the why. Why are we asking you to do this process? Why would you use this particular process? Don't assume that they understand that or know that. And especially if people are in a hurry and they're looking for something, you need to make this as simple as possible. So put a good example of why. Why would they use this? How? These are the detailed steps. You can walk yourself through the detailed steps of how to do something. First, we do this. Number 2, we do that. Number 3, number 4, number 5. As you can see from the little example I have on there, you can put screenshots. For example, if you're doing your timesheet process, who performs the steps? When are the steps done? How quickly should they get done? What is the deadline for getting them done? For example, if you send billing reports out to your billing managers and you want them back in 24 hours, you're laughing now, aren't you? Ha, ha, ha. 24 hours is how long they should have to get their billing reports back to you. Deadlines. Deadlines are very important. And what? Screenshots, what fields, what are the list of responses we could possibly answer questions with. Give them as much information as you can, but keep it clear and concise and simple. So that's the first type of business process, is the steps. The second is a flow chart. Now, some people don't like flow charts. I'm kind of one of those people. I don't enjoy flow charts, but flow charts are useful for when you're initially mapping out the process. So if a person says yes to you, we do this. If they say no to you, we do that. Or there could be multiple answers. If you call a client for collections, for example, yes, we got a copy of the invoice. No, we didn't get a copy of the invoice. Or a third answer, yes, but we have a question on the invoice. So there could be 3 options for a phone call to a client about collections. You need to give your employees what they're supposed to do in all 3 of those scenarios in a detailed way. Do they update your CRM system? Do they send a copy of the invoice and copy accounting? What is it that you expect them to do? And how are they supposed to do it? And then the third type of process is what I call a process flow. A process flow is a series of processes. So the example I have here is setting up a new project. It's actually made up of a whole bunch of different processes. You have the legal contract review. You may have data in your opportunity in your CRM that gets transferred to a project. You may need to create subcontractor files or do something with your subs or subcontractor contracts. You may have to set up the project in Deltac or Clearview or a Jira, whatever it is. You may need to create the project budget. You may need to schedule the kickoff meeting. There's a whole number of things that you may need to do, or that your accounting department needs to do. Various people may need to do. So a process flow could be 5 different processes. Think about onboarding an employee. That is actually like 20 different processes that happen when you onboard an employee. So you may have separate processes for each of the things that go on. Like you may have background checks and drug screening and compliance testing and setting up their IT and setting them up on the website and setting them up in your Deltec system. And those are all separate processes, but they are in a flow. They're in a workflow that happens because something initiates hiring a person and it creates a whole stream of processes. And so your employees need to have all of those steps or else things may not go well. So there's 10 steps to revise and document processes. First thing I'd like to do is assess what you're doing now. So you can actually figure out what you're doing now, write it all down, identify what's working and not working. And you can do this with interviewing people, walking through the process yourself, trying to figure it out, mapping it out, interviewing everyone, running through it. And usually then you get to the point of maybe starting to document a new process. But even once you've documented it, test it out in a small group first before you launch it out to everyone. And then finally, you're going to roll it out to your entire firm, but have a plan in place. You need to communicate, make sure you're communicating why you're doing it. Sending it out to rolling it out should be a whole process. And how you're going to then go back, get feedback, test it, make sure it's working and continue to tweak it, right? Because it may not work the first time. You may have people coming back to you saying, this didn't work, I don't like this takes too long, I couldn't get it to work in the system, whatever it is. And there may be ways to continue to keep automating it using workflows. If you're using Vision, you can create workflows. Whatever system you're using may have a similar workflow or flow capability. So setting up a new process is a whole series of steps. But once you start to do it, you will get better and better at it. So I suggest you start with something simple like your timesheets, which will actually have a massive impact on your company because everybody in your firm does timesheets. Hopefully, everybody in your firm does timesheets. I also really suggest, and I brought this up earlier, is to give your employees a voice. And this is actually a screenshot of the summary page of our business management assessment. Because it's just a really fast, automated, and quick way to get a lot of feedback. But you can create a survey if you want, but ask your employees, what are we doing well? What needs more work? Getting their feedback will give you a tremendous amount of insight as to what they know and don't know, what they like and don't like. It'll also show you, interestingly enough, you might see on this in this summary yellow. What I discovered about yellow usually means that half the employees said it's going great and half the employees said it was terrible, and it averages out to yellow. So sometimes you'll get all yellow and you're like, why are we so mediocre? It's really not. It's actually that there's a lot of disagreement across your organization about how things are working. And that's when you can dig into the details and try to figure out what is going on. Why do we have this level of disagreement? Now, one thing I wanted to share with you is that change is never easy. And this is probably why many of you have had a difficult time getting your employees to follow your processes. And I wanted to share with you, I love this example of the 3 levels of resistance, because this resistance is normal. And instead of getting frustrated with resistance from your employees, what I'd like you to do is anticipate resistance, okay? So there's 3 types. So the top one, the number one that comes up initially in the very beginning, whenever you try to do something new in your company, is I don't get it. What I don't get it means is I don't understand why we need this. Okay, so I want you to think back when you've implemented, if any of you have ever implemented a CRM system and been very disappointed with the results that you got, with people's enthusiasm about using it and how it's such a struggle. It's usually because of all 3 of these reasons, but I don't get it. It's the first thing you need to deal with. Why are we doing this? How's this going to help us? How's it going to make us more profitable? How's it going to help us improve our win rate in our proposal practices and our client satisfaction, our client relationships? Why are we even putting in a whole new piece of software? Why? Okay, so I don't get it. You're going to get a lot of resistance from I don't get it if you don't deal with the why. The second one is I don't like it. This doesn't actually mean that they don't like the software. What it usually means is they don't like what the impact it's having on them. Okay, because most of your employees only really care about how it impacts them. So I don't like it means this is making my job tougher. You think I have time every day to enter more data into another system? So the way you can deal with that is to come back to them before you even launch it out there and say, we know that it's going to take you a while to get used to entering your data in a new system. And at first, it may appear to be more cumbersome. But what you're going to find is it's going to get rid of spreadsheets that you're spending time on. It's going to get rid of sticky notes all over your desk. And it's going to help you be more organized and remember when to call clients back. And it's going to help us a lot. It's going to help you a lot. It's actually going to make your job a lot easier. If you don't tell your employees how what you're doing is going to make their life easier, they will not buy into it. The third type is, I don't like you. Well, it really doesn't mean they don't like you as a person. What it means is, how many times before in the company have you launched something out that failed? And then 3 months later, it went away and no one ever talked about it anymore. And I promise you that every one of you can think of at least one thing that's happened. And for many, many firms, the CRM system is a perfect example of that. I've implemented hundreds of CRM systems and very successfully. But without the right change management practices in place and the right processes behind it and the right work that you need to do with your people, it's not going to be successful. So I don't like you means, yeah, I know you told me about this once before and it failed. So why should I believe that it's going to work this time? Can you really blame them for that? So you can deal with this head on before you even launch it. Say, hey, we realize that we've had problems in the past getting these things to work, but this time's going to be different. And here is why. Because we're fully committed. We have a strategy. We have a plan. We have the right people and resources and consultants behind us. We're going to make it work this time. And it will work if you're fully committed. So if you deal with all 3 of these levels of resistance up front, you're not going to have all that resistance. And that resistance is really what's making it so painful for you to to get things done and get new things implemented. So if you go and research this, you'll find that it takes 66 days to change a habit. And what that means is when you implement methods of accountability around any new business process, any new system, or anything that you're doing, you need to stay on top of it for quite a while to make sure that employees are actually making it a habit. Now, for example, in my Find the Lost Dollars training, one of the things that we emphasize is daily timesheets. Now, sometimes when people hear me talk about daily timesheets, they're like, what? I can't even get people to do it every week. But it actually becomes more of a habit when you do it every day. Because doing something once a week requires you to remember it. But once you start doing something every day, it actually becomes more of a habit than it does if you do it once a week. So it's actually easier over a period of time, but it takes 66 days. That's a little over 2 months or 10 weeks to implement a new process or a new habit. And so keep that in mind. That means you've got to keep your foot on the gas. You have to maintain monitoring, measures of accountability. You need to stay on top of it to make sure people are actually doing it. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get everyone to change their habit and start to follow the processes. So keep that in mind, 66 days, and you need to have a plan in place when you put it in place to track it and make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. And there should be consequences for not doing it. If everyone in your firm knows there's no consequences for not doing their timesheet, there's no consequences for not managing their projects or making collection calls or anything that you're asking them to do, if there's no accountability around it, they're not going to do it. They're absolutely not going to do it. They're going to take the easy way out. It's just human nature. So if you want something new, and I believe that's why all of you are on this web training today, because you want something different, something new, you have to actually stop doing some things that you were doing and start doing some new things. And it will make a huge difference for you. And I just wanted to let you know what are the reasons that our clients call us. If you happen to, at some point, realize that you might need help with one of these things, I'd love for you to reach out and let me know, and I'm happy to talk with you about it. If you're leaking profits from your projects and you're not hitting your profit targets, and this is going to get harder and harder to do over the next 12 months, that's something that I have a soundproof method for. Your project managers and your project leaders don't understand business, and they don't think like an owner. I've got a solution for that too. You're growing and you need better processes and systems. I'd say that's probably one of the reasons you're on this webinar today. You have inconsistency in how people are doing their work, and you have silos. One of the trends that I'm seeing in the A&E industry is companies come to me and they're like, we want to be one company. We're tired of being all these separate groups, offices, teams, and doing everything. Everybody does their things their own way. So you want to be one company. And that will make you a much, much stronger organization when everybody does things the same way. And if you happen to be a newer leader and you've come into a situation where maybe the same business practices have been in place for 10 or more years, you want to modernize, you want to get people doing things more automated, that's one of the reasons people call me. So reach out if you would like to talk about any of these things. I'd also like to offer you a free copy of my book. And it's actually the abridged version of the book. So it's actually a quick read. I have a longer version, but this one is a good summary of all the main points. It goes through each of the 9 areas of your business and shows you where you might be losing money and how to stop the money from leaking from your business. And so if you'd like to get a copy of it, go to this website, aecbusiness.com ebook, and you can download a free copy. And so I'm going to open things up for Q&A. And let's see. Looks like we have a question from James. We're a small firm with small budgets, project budgets, and most project tracking systems would consume our project budgets. What kind of processes would be most effective for us? I've seen some different versions. Well, first of all, there are some project budgeting systems that are fairly simple and straightforward. And you could probably, depending on the size of your firm and your growth, you'd be using one of those. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to kind of go over what the leading ones in the industry are for engineers. The other thing is, if you're already using a system, one of the tricks that we used to do in Deltec, and I'm not sure if you can do this in every system, but in Vision, you can put multiple projects inside of one project plan. A lot of people don't know that. And so if you have the resource planning module, you can put a whole bunch of small projects, like all the projects for one client, inside one plan. It makes it a lot faster and easier to manage. That's one idea I have. But if you want to dig into that a little bit deeper, depending on what software you already have, or whether you're doing spreadsheets, then there could be some different answers there. Let's see, another question. What have you seen to be effective consequences for failing to follow processes? For example, timesheets not getting submitted timely. I do have a few of these things covered in my book. I have a whole chapter in my training program. I have a whole course on, it's called Time is Money, and really training people on why timesheets are so important. And so there's really two things. One is you really do need to train employees on why you're asking them to do their timesheet. It might seem really, really obvious to you, but the average employee does not understand the connection between their timesheet and their paycheck. No idea. The average employee believes that their timesheet is Big Brother wanting to know what they're doing. They don't understand that it's a business management tool and that it's there to help you manage the business, bill your clients, track your projects, produce financial statements and overhead rates and all of those things. They don't understand that. So number one is train them. Number two, there are consequences you can put in place. One of my favorite ones is if you go 3 times with missing your submission of your timesheets on time, you get removed from direct deposit. And we're gonna mail you your check. Now, you may not want to do that these days because some firms don't cut checks anymore, but if you are still cutting checks, that's something that I've seen be very effective. There's other things you can do. You can do public shaming. You the wall of shame where you put their name up in the kitchen if they haven't done their time sheets. There's a lot of different scenarios. You'll see in the book, one of my clients took an employee's paycheck to Wyoming and took a picture of it. Whatever you have to do to get them to do it. Maybe they have to come in and sit down with the managing principal of your firm and have a conversation. I worked for a CPA firm in the early days when I was starting out my career, and the managing principal would walk into everyone's office who hadn't done their timesheet. Now that was only a 50-person firm. It's impossible if you have a large organization. But after a while, nobody wants to see that person coming to ask them where their timesheet is. And obviously that's very difficult with everyone working at home. But there are things you can do. You can send out reminders and alerts. Some systems have what's called a floor check that sends an alert out every single day if you haven't done your timesheet. So there are things you can do. I recommend you get a copy of the book. Maybe there's some other ideas in there for how to get certain processes in place that you've struggled with. And of course, if you want to talk some more with me about it, I'd love to chat with you about it. Oh, and James said, I interrupt their weekend on Sunday if they haven't turned them in. I love it. That's awesome. Perfect. And I have seen the carrot approach. Well, there's the carrot and the stick. The carrot could be anybody who does their timesheet, you know, X number of times in a row on time gets a recognition of some sort. Um, I had one client who said every day that you don't get your timesheet in on time, you lose $100 off your bonus at the end of the year. And he had 0 compliance problems. So there are definitely things you can do, whatever you think will work within your culture and your with your employees. So if there's no more questions, happy to take your questions one-on-one if you want to chat on the phone or have send me an email. Happy to answer your questions. Don't forget to reach out to me if you need PDHs for your PE license, and I will take care of that for you, send you a certificate, and I'm happy to help you with anything else that I can. Thank you very, very much for joining us today on behalf of ACEC Texas, and I really enjoyed the webinar, and I hope you got a lot out of it. Thank you so much.